So it'll be interesting.
Oh, I see now.
So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Lake Clear Lodge. And this is Cathy Hohmeyer. We're doing a new webinar, a new series, basically, of webinars here on the Lake Clear Lodge page. I normally do these on my energetic support page, which it's folks who have worked with me before in energetics. And I see a few folks coming on. And before I introduce my guest, we're talking all about life force today. And that's really what it boils down to, is life force. Hey, Pat. Pat's here. So hello, Pat. Glad to see you here. And it's all about life force. But I want to tell you a little bit, some of you watching this either now or on the replay, and I know a lot of you said, oh, I hope there's a replay, and there will be. So if you have to miss some, you can go back. I will post the replay. But I just want to tell you about connectedness, because some of you may be new to kind of, you know, what some people call energy work, or working in the quantum field, or whatever way you want to describe it. And some of you, I know already, are veterans at this. But speaking of veterans, I had, and connectedness, we had the privilege of having a retired Navy SEAL stay with us this past weekend. And I have to tell you, he is humble. He believes in the American public. And we had fascinating conversations with he and his wife. And it's just amazing, the connectedness you can have with people who literally walk in your door. And a little background with that, too. My son is looking into joining the military, which, drives me crazy. But he really wants to serve in the right way. And since he started this journey, we actually had, as soon as he actually applied to this half military school, he's in the civilian side at the moment, this guy showed up who graduated from the school. I mean, he was a repeat, a rebook. So we never would have even met this guy or known about where he went or asked questions if he hadn't have had to rebook his stay. It was just amazing, the connected. So we're like, oh my gosh, we can talk to this guy about the college. And then when this, and there's been other things like this. We saw Navy jets fly over, like really low. Didn't know what they were doing. 2 days later, the pilots were sitting in our dining room talking to us. And my son and my other son and my husband got to go see them take off at the airport nearby. And then this Navy SEAL walks in this weekend, and I have a friend now who's a client, one of my long-term clients for a couple of years, and she and I are pretty connected. And I was telling her about this Navy SEAL, this wonderful conversation. He believes in the American public. And she goes, oh my gosh, Cathy, I'm walking my dog. There is a SEAL out there in the water. I never see them. So I asked this man if he saw the same thing. The guy has a Navy SEAL hat on. You can't make up this connectedness that happens. So it is just so amazing. Which brings me to our guest today, because I've been around the block exploring energy work, energetics, the quantum field, again, whatever you want to call it. And you guys who log on, you can ask questions, and I'll try and keep track of you. Say hello and tell us where you're from, because I love to see where people are from. This gets to people all over the world, and it's really awesome. So please do say hello. You can comment while we're talking. If I don't get to questions, we can get to them later in the comment box. So please ask questions and say hello. So here I'm today here with Keith Coley. Hey, Keith.
Hi.
And I met Keith through a class that I took that just encompassed a lot of the energy work that I have explored in the past few years. A lot of things, but I'll let Keith talk mostly. I just want to talk about connectedness. Get some folks to log on so you don't miss that. So Keith, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what today's show is all about, aside from life force.
Okay. I live out here on the peninsula here in the state of Washington, and I moved out here in order to be closer to nature and a little further away from the hubbub of the city, which we were living. In nature. Did you lose me?
I did for just a second. I clicked the wrong button. We got you. Sorry about
that. Being out here on the peninsula here in the state of Washington, it's very much about being connected to nature. And my background in Chinese medicine has helped me to understand further the long history that we have as humanity with nature and how we really are a part of nature. And just because we have technology, just because we have nice, comfortable, climate-controlled homes does not mean that we are any less a part of nature. It's simply about our paying attention to it and staying in our minds and in our hearts connected to nature and realizing that we are a part of it. You live in a very beautiful place, very much about nature. I've seen by the pictures. And that's really that's the root of all energetic work. It's nothing really that mysterious, any more mysterious than nature is. So that's really the root of what I do and what my studies with Chinese medicine are all about. And like you, I have studied many different types of energetic backgrounds, but really the roots typically go back to this very ancient Asian understanding of our connectedness to the 5 elements that we talk about in the Chinese medical world. So the course that you took with me is really all about that. And so today I would like to talk about this idea of being connected to nature, this idea of what life force is and how it is really what animates everything, and that how in quantum mechanics and quantum physics, we're really getting a modern day understanding of this very ancient wisdom.
Yeah, and I love that finally the science and the woo-woo is combining, and it's not woo-woo anymore. I just love it. I'm deep into science. I love science. I was trained as an occupational therapist. I've studied the body blueprint, both in the quantum and the real body, and it's been amazing. I do live in a place of nature. I'm going to put the website up too while you're talking. But I chose 30 years ago to come back to kind of my roots. Found out that my place that I operate now was built by my great aunt and uncle.
I didn't know that.
Out of the family. There's more to the story. It's crazy.
Wow.
It was sold out of the family to a family named Jarvis, who operated it for a number of years and closed it down. And then it was purchased by the Hohmeyers, which is my husband's family. I worked for them when I was 14 and 15, never dreaming I would be doing this ever. I went to, I ended up being an occupational therapist, came back after I was making a whole lot of money being an occupational therapist in private practice in the 80s. And I came back and decided I wanted this place to be some kind of a different wellness center. And so I started, most of our friends think that I married into the family and just had to take it over, but that's not the case. I was leasing it and never got rid of the Hohmeyers. And long story short, I ended up marrying Ernest, and we are both back here kind of combining the families and trying to really, not trying, we are, get the trying word, right? We're offering a really beautiful place that people can come, a small resort, and now after 30 years, it's becoming a wellness center, much more integrated like we wanted to a long time ago. So, yeah.
I think that's fantastic. And that is more of the story than I did not know. And I think it's really important, especially now as we have such a state of instant connectedness in the way of information flow. And so people are realizing what health could be and the things that are actually detrimental to our health and our well-being. And so when you can go to one place and you can receive that well-rounded knowledge and understanding of the ways to regain or at least maintain our health in the midst of back to nature, a time where we were realizing, whoa, we've ostracized the very mother that keeps us and sustains us, and it's time to reconnect. So in a place like yours, from what I've seen the pictures, I'm certain you would feel that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Cool story. I didn't know that, Cathy. That's great.
Yeah, and I do a lot of the energetic processes here. I think this is a resort that's a little bit different than others. I do clear the property. We have an energetic portal on the lake. It's just amazing, and I have pictures that I'll put in the comments. It's just amazing. We saw the light of the portal one time, and nobody else noticed it. I don't know what that happened, but we do work with real food, with getting local stuff, and we try and combine every component that we can here at the lodge. So that's why we're going for more of the wellness, I'm going to say market, because I think more of the people who realize what they want to get away from and what they want to come to, if they're living in a spot, at the moment that doesn't really connect them.
Exactly. And I know we've had a move towards cities in the last few decades, a lot of concentration in cities, but I think there's more and more people, especially as you get older, you know, when you're in your 20s and 30s, I think you're often like, oh, city hubbub, all the nightlife and so on. And you get a little older and have a family, and your family grows up and they leave the house, and you're like, okay, I want to get back to what feeds my soul. It sounds a little cheesy, but that's really what it feels like. It's what feeds your soul. And you start realizing this idea of the energetic connectedness to things, because you can feel it so palpably in nature. But even if you live in a city, you don't have to feel like you don't have the ability to access that type of feeling. You can't get away from it. You know, in Chinese medicine, we talk about the body and how it has this circuitry that we call meridians or channels in Chinese medicine. And that circuitry is just really the infrastructure of your body's energetic scaffolding of your body as it's developing in your mother's womb. So all of that information is there as a blueprint. And then as you're developing in utero, the flesh starts to unfold from that. DNA gets its marching orders to unfold and create the physicality that becomes your body. Well, with that, going back to nature, the earth has recognized by ancient cultures this same type of energetic infrastructure, this circuitry. These meridians that the earth has. We think of them as longitude and latitude are the only ways we think of that growing up in school and so on. That's how we see the globes and the maps, so we can orient ourselves on the map. But in reality, that's what you have when you walk the earth. There's these concentrations of flow of energy and information that help to feed, you know, this planet. Obviously, there's something living here. We're on this planet. It's alive. And we are connected to the planet in a very symbiotic sort of a way. And so when you realize this connectedness that cannot be avoided, it does make one question a few things about who we are and what is this life force that seems to animate everything. And to me, it's always been a lifelong fascination since I was a kid. I thought it was just the stuff of comic books and sci-fi, you know, or fantasy novels, until I got into acupuncture school. And I realized, you know, I knew that there was something more to it. I wouldn't have joined an academy to go to acupuncture school. But it's once I got in there and met some other people who let me start to feel it, that it was something that was palpable, that you could learn to feel, anybody could, and feel even better, that I was like, oh my gosh, this is the stuff of my childhood. This isn't just fantasy, it's reality. And you know, it's not, there isn't the real world and the energetic world. The real world and the energetic world are the same world. We're made up of all this information, this quanta, you know, quantum physics. We're made up, it's all little packets of information, quanta. That's who we are. And it's like you said earlier, the woo-woo, there really isn't anything woo-woo about it. We just didn't have the same language decades ago, let alone hundreds and thousands of years, to describe what we were experiencing. We have a different language now that at least the public's going, well, I've heard of quantum mechanics or quantum physics. I recognize that as being something that's real and scientific. Therefore, I think more people are at least curious about what this world of energetics is all about, because they feel like they have the pass to look into it. It's not some crazy philosophy or religion. It's actually science.
And I think the class with you, when I took that, was the first time I took the time to really start to feel it. I had worked with it. I do different processes, but didn't take the time to feel it. And between the Qigong and the different energy work that you were talking, I finally took the time to feel it, and you get validation. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, all the animals feel it. If you grow up like I did out in a small dairy community in a town of like 5,000 people in the southwest corner of Missouri, you're out in the sticks most of the time, and you're around farm animals. And so if you watch animals, domesticated animals or wild animals, operate, you see how they are in touch with that. You see how when a storm approaches, how livestock react before the storm ever gets there. They can feel what's happening. But a lot of people can. I mean, really, how many people say, oh, I know it's going to rain. I can tell the barometric pressure's changing. My knee's starting to ache, or I'm getting a headache, or I can just feel the heaviness. That's still an energetic perception by humanity. And that one has always been a little more accepted when it comes to weather patterns. But that's because it's so overt in your face. But this idea of feeling what's going on around you, like you said, is something that I think every child does. we are educated out of it typically as we get older. But it's really a remembering. When you do what you've done, it's a remembering of what we once had in our awareness as children. I know it's there. I've got a 3-year-old. I watch him. Can I tell you a crazy story?
Oh, of course. We love crazy stories.
So we're pushing him in the stroller. He finally likes being in a stroller at 3. Didn't like it as a small child. And we're working our way down the street to the main street, which is the 101 highway that cuts through town. And there's all kinds of buildings as you have in a downtown area. And he says, "Oh, look, it's the city bus." And since it's the 101, it's the only highway that goes around the peninsula. So you have to pass through here. And I looked around and I said, "Buddy, I don't see a city bus." As we got closer to the 101, the main strip, and we rounded the corner of the building that we could not see around, there on the other side of the building was the city bus. And it was waiting to have people load into it. And and for me, that's stretching it even for me. I was like, did you look through the building? How in the world did you know the city bus was there? There's no reflective surfaces to see it. I mean, how did you do that? But he does stuff like that all the time. And little kids do that. And they remind us of what we're capable of doing when we take the filters off of our vision of what can be and what can't be. And since they don't have the what can't be when they're this little, they experience all kinds of things that we could be, but we filtered out. And when it comes to food, I've always chosen my food by feeling the energy of the food, the efficacy of the food before I'd ever put it in my cart, ever. Because I knew I trained myself to feel what had more life force or not have life force. Sometimes it's obvious. You can look at a plant and go, that plant looks pretty sick, low life force. Sometimes they're extremely vibrant. You're like, that has more life force in it. Sometimes it's really easy. But when you learn to feel like you have, you can feel your way through your life, knowing what is life-giving and what is life, not giving. Even looking at wild plant life in nature, you're like, could I eat that or not eat that? You can start to learn to feel what would make you sick or what would make you have an actual meal you could digest. I know that sounds out there, but it's the reality of who we really are.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm my own chef here in the restaurants, and got just started. I think that was my way into energy work. Was that energy, of course, is food for our food is energy for our body, and you just take it just further in what is good energy and bad energy. And like you said, some is just common sense, whether it's really processed or not processed.
Sure.
But there's a way to energize food. There's a way to look at the energy of food, and some people just headed by learning muscle testing and what their body says yes and no to, by learning to muscle test. And you can do that. That's the way I stepped into it, by learning, okay, kind of more on a scientific level of my muscle says yes or no. And you can do that. So that's really cool. And then you can work into, some just get it, all at once. And others like me have kind of stepped into it and just gone, okay, let me see the science behind that. Let me feel the science behind that. And then you kind of get into it. And I've developed a whole program called Nutritional Energetics, which is not necessarily all about food, although I do cooking classes. It's about nourishing your multidimensional body, and just what you said, kind of, what food has the life force and the nutrition for you, and what parts of your body need to be nourished with those different frequencies. And so
exactly.
Frequencies, life force.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we're driving up today to Port Angeles because our farmer, our beef and other types of meat, but beef primarily, we're going to go pick up tongue and some tallow because somebody had a cow butchered and they didn't want the tongue and they didn't want the fat. And we're like, hang on to it. We'll make the trip and come get the tongue. If they had a heart or liver, we would grab it too. But he's a local farmer. He doesn't use anything on the fields. The cows are grass fed all the way through. They live butts right up against the mountain range. I mean, it's paradise for the animals. We've seen the animals, and you can tell by how they're living. They are content animals, very content.
I've been a Western Price chapter leader for, tons of years. I'm one of their longest standing chapter leaders of the Western Price Foundation. If people don't know that, I do seminars and webinars in my cooking classes based around that. But it's traditional food preparations where actually the life force is increased by those preparation methods instead of decreased. So, just to mention that, but it's really cool stuff. But it's the traditional food preparations, and it's really, it increases the life force of food when you prepare them in a certain way.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue into when I first learned about that, because I didn't understand anything about infusing anything, let alone food. And so my Qigong teacher, Master Owen Wei, who lives out in the Bay Area, well, actually Napa Valley area now, he cooked a meal for me after I took classes from him 17 years ago. And he cooked a meal for everybody. He's a master Chinese chef. And I was eating my first plate of food. Now, I can't eat like a 6'5" guy, okay, typically. And I'm having my first plate of food. And as I'm eating it, I tell my friend who's known Mastro 5 years before I did, in fact, introduced me to him, Paul Frazier. And I said, why do I feel like I'm drunk in my body, but my mind is as clear as a bell? Those don't go together. I said, what is happening to me? He said, well, Master O, as he's preparing the food, he has so much love in his heart that he's infusing the food deliberately with that love, that energy from him, and increasing the life force in a way you've probably never experienced before. I mean, I'd never had food make my body feel drunk and my mind crystal clear. It was like having a stimulant for your mind and a beautiful Oxycontin type of an effect on your body. I only say that because I've had it post-surgery before, Oxycontin, and it just has this weird warm feeling. And so I learned, that was my first thing of my little hint of, dude, the whole world is made of life force. It's filled with life force. And with the food, you can take any food, and how you prepare it depends on whether it's full of life force or full of your disappointment of your day, the anger that you're in at the moment. And then it got me thinking about restaurants and going and eating food from people you don't know.
I was going to say that exactly. In running a restaurant, it's a real challenge because you're in a tense situation. You're trying to get food out. You're trying to make everything perfect. God bless the food channel, but, heaven forbid somebody doesn't critique you and, in full.
That's
and
right.
It's hard to stay calm and centered. I mean, I have little, geometric forms all over my kitchen because I'm in a tense situation, yet trying and doing, offering food that's prepared consciously and served consciously. And it's a challenge for restaurants. It's a really hard thing to do.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I mean, I've worked a couple of times briefly in restaurants, not as a chef, but as working as wait staff. And I'm just wait staff in those situations and realize, oh my gosh, this is incredibly stressful back here. And the timing of everything and everybody working in concert. And I was like, I don't know how you ever stay in a great place doing that. And what's funny though is not funny, haha, but interesting is in the Qigong world, which is basically the foundation really of Chinese medicine. Qigong, Qi means life force, the energy that sustains us in this context, and Gong means to cultivate. So Qigong is to cultivate life force. And in Mastro's world, there's a phrase, a very broken English because it's Chinese to English translation, that says, take kindness and benevolence as basis. Take frankness and friendliness to heart. Speak with reason. Treat with courtesy. Act with emotion and accomplish results. And so when you're cooking food, Mastro says cooking food or doing anything, this password phrase is like when old days in computers, you'd say execute when you'd want to execute some software on your screen before we had all these wonderful icons and stuff. And it's almost like you're executing software. You're setting off a software sequence that starts moving all this life force through your body automatically into wherever you're directing your intention. And that's what I learned to use when I was infusing food, which helped to take whatever mindset or heart set I was in and refocus it and center it, and then allow all that to pour out of me into the food so that it wasn't my tense day that I was experiencing coming out in my food or my client or my family or my pets, whatever in life. I wanted to have that beautiful, loving essence come through. That was one of the triggers for that I learned 17 years ago. And as you found out in the class, the Energy Worker Academy, that is one of the basics and basis of that entire practice, is learning how to get into that state of being immediately, so that you can allow that to flow through you.
And there's been a lot of folks that know me will understand that, you know, there's perfect fields for everything, and there's passphrases for a lot of different processes that have used words to mean certain things, and like you said, the kind of the execute. But the passphrase that you just said, I have to say, is one of the most powerful that I've ever felt. And that's just amazing. So, you know, it's really deep and high. I want to say very powerfully standing in our field, because otherwise it would dissipate and it wouldn't be strong at all. So it's a very powerful one. Yeah. And I can put up pictures anytime you want.
Sure. Yeah. If you would, sometimes people are really good at feeling the energy of someone by seeing a picture. And like Master O, you could pick any of them, you know, him teaching in that red sweater or whatever. Yeah. And some people see those pictures of him, and there he is. He's 71 years old. He works on, he has 20 acres there in the Napa Valley area that he works like he's a farmer. And I'll give you an interesting story, speaking of plants. So in Mastro's experience, he had and this is going to get a little out there for some, but I've experienced it. I know it's the reality, at least that I've experienced. He had a waking vision for a few days of this beautiful place, Earth, where people were loving and benevolent and respectful of each other. And he awakened from that vision, if you will. It was still a waking vision, but he came out of it. And he carries that feeling of that beautiful kindredship we can have with each other all the time. Well, around his house there in that Napa Valley in Fairfield, California, to be precise, I went there last December, almost a year ago. And all of the flowers, all the plants you would see in the summertime were still blooming. They were still in full bloom all around the house. And you ask him, how is this happening? This is not supposed to be going on this time of year. And he said, well, I have a relationship with great nature. And I've asked great nature if great nature would show its beauty year round, so my students who visit, which are there all the time from somewhere, could see great nature's bounty. This includes his produce. And so he infuses that 20 acres with his energy that he cultivates every day. And in response, great nature gives him this out of season for the rest of us, plant life growing all around that house. And we all can have that type of relationship with great nature, as he says. And he just exudes this 24/7. The man travels all over the world. He's in Japan right now. They just took off for Japan to go teach over there for a few days. He works circles around people that are a quarter of his age easily. I've never seen the man ever get tired in his life doing anything. He'll treat 30, 40, 50 people in a day and then go cook food and then give a lecture after that. He's just tireless. Why? Because of that kindness in his heart, which is the shortcut, he says, to being able to cultivate beautiful, loving energy. If you ever see Star Wars or know the Star Wars idea, you have those who are following the light side of the Force, if you will, and then the dark side of the Force. And the quick path to the dark side is anger and hate. And it's limited. It's got a cap on it, how strong you can get. On the light side of the Force, it is about acceptance and love and lack of resistance. And it's limitless in the ability to cultivate. Well, George Lucas wasn't totally off base, in my opinion. There was actually some truth to what he had put into those stories. And it's a reality, in my experience, that the more loving we are, the more life force we are able to cultivate. And the healing happens then from the innermost place outward. And that can change your life and everybody around you. And that's part of what I teach in the academy that I'm doing online, which, by the way, this next academy starting on the 31st of this month is my last one I'll be doing live. No more live interactions like this. It'll all go into evergreen content. So, and because I have so many people with busy schedules, they want an evergreen version of this. But I'll tell you right now, as convenient as an evergreen version of my class is, it's not going to be, frankly, as rich as a live interaction where everything is tailored for the students who are there on the screen with me. And that 8-week program, I've loved doing it, but I have so many people now asking me for the evergreen portion. I'm going to devote my time, at least for the near future and maybe the infinite future, for that type of thing. So if you want to get in to do a live version of what we're talking about, this is the last one I'll be doing on the 31st of this month.
Okay, and I'll put the link up to that, Keith, which they don't necessarily have to copy. I'll put it up because I had typed it in earlier, but they can actually, we can put it in the comments later, so they can go back to the show and see the, there we go. It's a little bit of a longer link, so you can either go back in time to the video and the replay shows,
right,
or we'll put it in the link after the show so that you can click on that and see where that goes.
And what I'll say about that too, Cathy, is for those who are more sensitive to life force, just energetically sensitive, or people who are also people who are like, I can't be around a lot of people very long. I seem to pick up everybody's energetic cooties. And it's overwhelming. Those are usually the people who are also extremely, they're just empathic. Pat says, I find the envisioning myself doing the Qigong form with master increases as a result of energy cultivation. Anything, there's music that Master narrated for the Qigong form that Pat's talking about. And when you listen to him narrating that and do the Qigong form, that cultivation form, it does increase the power of it. And like, as I've been talking to you this morning, or afternoon, I guess, where you are, I'm deliberately loading my language, my sound, with more energy than I would normally just having a conversation one-on-one with somebody. So those of you who do either live now or in recording feel that. And you're like, what is he putting off? Maybe you have weird aches and pains or feel kind of sleepy or euphoric or whatever that is. That's your reaction to it. That's what I'm deliberately doing. And that's what we all put off. It's just if you don't cultivate it, you can't emit as much of it if you don't have a lot of it to emit. And can I say one thing about like other energy forms? Typically, this idea of cultivation is very unique to the Chinese Qigong world. Most Western energy working styles, Reiki and so on, don't have that as a part of their concepts of cultivating qi and storing it in the bones, storing it in the connective tissue, storing it in the field and getting bigger and bigger in that way. That's just not a part of the teaching that I hear about. And in the Eastern traditions, it very much is the basis of it. And so in my course,
I see a lot of folks who, are energy workers or whatever, but they themselves don't have a lot of energy. They want to help, so that they want to be to really help, but they don't have the energy themselves. And the cultivation for it. So it's something for anybody who's working in the field. If you really want to cultivate more energy, I had to. This is why I have been, chasing this for years, because I own a lodge. We homeschool 3 kids. I'm a chef. We have things going on here from 8 in the morning till midnight. It's a little seasonal, thank goodness. But I had to know there's no substitute for me down there in the kitchen. We don't open if I'm there. If I'm not there, we have a very small crew. Thank goodness it's been mostly my family where we could literally work without talking and have a real, it's really fun actually, to be able to work with a group that you just know what you're doing, what the flow is, and literally the energy can flow. And you can serve some people kind of, mostly flawlessly, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, when it works seamless, it's a beautiful thing. And it does take that type of unspoken connectedness that you often have with family, or at least people who feel like family. And there's a lot to be said for having a crew that's that tight. I mean, everything works a lot better when you're that tight. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, this idea, I want to say that this type of energetic work, I want to be specific. This isn't just for people, what you and I, because obviously you're doing something, you're not hanging out a shingle and having clients come in and get on and sit in a chair, or lie down on a table. That's not the primary focus of your energetic work with the community, which you're a beautiful example of the point I want to make. You don't have to be hanging out a shingle and calling yourself an energy worker for this to be crucial to your life. It doesn't matter what you're doing. As you're interacting with your fellow humans, you are you're always emitting something. That's the part of being alive. It's a question of, are you conscious of what you're emitting? Have you gone inside to look at what's in here that gets emitted? And do you have the appropriate amount of life force necessary to give a nice, healthy emission to affect those around you in a beautiful, positive way? And the answer is you can learn how to do that if you don't know how to do it and aren't doing it consciously. And it's good for anything in life, no matter what your field is. If you're like, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom, well, that means you have children at home. And boy, I don't know what's more important than being a stay-at-home parent and emitting beautiful, life-giving energy to your children, because you're setting the foundation for the rest of their lives.
I was just typing that in, Pete.
There's no better way, no better job in this world than being a parent. Mm-hmm. I've been a parent now twice. I've done it in 2 stages. I have a 23-year-old daughter and a grandson, and I have a 3-year-old. So I have it separated by some time and some reflection. And I'll tell you, at 48, there's not a more important role in life than being a parent. And this type of talk that Cathy and I are talking about right now, this idea of being consciously aware of your life force cultivation, is crucial to that role. It's crucial to every role. And that's been my mission in life. If you saw the little ditty I put out there, the quote, I used to do a class in Nashville, and it was life force, the missing variable of the health equation, because we look at food, we look at our toxicity of our environment, quality sleep, exercise, so on, all the more tangible things. But the underlying variable to all those, the underlying platform, is life force, that which animates. I had one of my teachers say a sort of macabre sort of saying, which is, you can give great food and supplements to a corpse, but it does not change their condition. But you give that to someone who has life force in them, and you can totally alter their condition. So what does that tell us? Life force is the driving, animating force that all other things depend on for health. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of morbid, but it works.
Okay, so I think I put up the right date there, Keith, where you said your Energy Academy is starting on the 31st, right?
Yeah, we have just a few more days left. In fact, I extended the early bird pricing all the way to the end. I just made it the final price because this is my last one. And to be quite honest, this class, I won't guarantee it'll last 8 weeks. It might go longer, just because, I don't know, I feel like it's my last hurrah, and I want to make sure I unload as much as I can. You were asking me about, like, I talked about time travel in my coursework. And so what that really means is, as we go through life, you have experiences that leave an indelible mark. And those create patterns in your life, many that you don't necessarily want to keep around. You like them to be different, more advantageous in your life, more create a smoother existence, if you will. And so in that class, we learn how to find those impact points in your history and then transform those into something that is more life-producing, life-giving, more flow, more momentum. And that's a really big thing. She was a psychologist. No, psychiatrist. No, psychologist. And I worked with her for a while, and we'd work on patients. And she called it the 500-pound problem. And I said, what do you mean by that? She goes, well, you have a thing happen, a stimulus of some kind. Somebody says something, and this part of you just blows up in its reaction. And even the observer in the moment, and certainly after the fact, goes, what in the world is wrong with me? Why did I have such a huge reaction to, now looking back, was such a small thing? And the reason why is it isn't just that thing. It's that thing resembles many other very important marks and parts and milestones in your life that have all stacked up in similarity. And so you have that stimulus again, you have the impact of all of the weight of all of those milestones or those markers in your life all coming to a head at once with all that energy stored. So if you can transform those impact points in your life, in your body that you're storing like a battery, you don't have those massive visceral responses to that stimuli anymore. So it's an interesting concept, and as I've worked with it over the years, it's true. It explains a lot of why we react to things in such an explosive way when it's seemingly not a big deal. So,
and it's a biological reaction, actually. It's energetic in nature, but a biological reaction to that. It's really interesting stuff.
Yes, you can look at it from all of the allopathic and Western viewpoint of why we react the way we do, and that brings us to a point of, when I talk about the energetic world and the energetic experience, these are just two sides of the very same coin. I worked out of a physician who he was a specialist in hypertension, but he approached it in a natural way when all possible. World-renowned guy, great physician. I've never had this kind of relationship with a doctor before, but he was just an amazing guy in his 60s, had seen multiple years of practice, and he and I understood that about each other. I understood that he had this beautiful expertise in understanding how the body worked from the viewpoint of biochemistry. And I had this other side of the coin of bioenergetics, and we would work on clients together. And it's the best matchup I've ever had working with an allopath or a Western side of the fence physician, because we got each other. We understood our strengths. And just to be clear, that is who we are. It's just two different viewpoints of understanding humanity. That's all it is.
And bringing in the different parts, because there's so many parts to look at.
Infinite perspectives, you know, and that's just it. That's why in the one of Mastro's maxims is, you know, to be broad-minded. He stresses being broad-minded, meaning make sure that you have been in a total receptive state and taken in information to your deepest way possible to then assess it and discern if it's something you want to keep and use or not. But you'll never know that if you're not broad-minded enough to entertain things that at least, you know, maybe even the very beginning of hearing them, it starts to rub you the wrong way because it seems to be counter to what you believe. But if you don't take it all the way in, you can't weigh it thoroughly to make sure it isn't something that would be useful in your viewpoint, your filtering of the world. I had another teacher years ago, Dr. Richard Bartlett here in Seattle, and he said, you know, we received 1 trillion bits of information per second in our awareness. And our filters, though, filter out the majority of that. What are filters? They are the beliefs that you have obtained and retained that you have picked up along the way from other people's viewpoints and your own experience. But they really are just that. They're just filters to look through with which to see the world. And if you can get to a state where you're so open-minded that you could at least temporarily, like you suspend disbelief when you watch a movie, you're just going to let those come off for a minute and say, well, what would I notice in my world as my experience if I didn't have these filters on? What would it feel like? And it's a beautiful practice so that you can start to obtain different viewpoints in life and how to look at your life experience.
I've got some more pictures here. Did you want to go over anything on those, Steve?
I'm trying to think of what I sent you.
I've got the Meridian Points. I've got the spine.
Yeah. Okay. If you would for a second, one thing we cover in that course is the Huatuo points, which I'll explain if you show that map, that picture of the spinal points there that are part of China. There we go. So just so you guys get an idea, and this is appropriate right now because as we're talking about the marrying of West and East viewpoints, there was a doctor well over 1,000 years ago, maybe closer to 1,500, named Dr. Huatuo. And the Huatuo Jiaji points are basically Huatuo points named after the physician in China. These points are right along the outer border of the spine going down. And in my class, we use these as an indicator. If you're a body worker, meaning you put your hands on a body, you'll feel a lot of knots and tender spots along the spine. I have clients all the time, like, my back went out, or I think I've got a vertebrae out in between my shoulder blades, or about bra line, I have this constant pain, or my upper lower back has constant pain. I don't look at that as strictly a muscular issue. It is a muscular issue, but the marrying of the two worlds is why energetically is that happening there? If you look at that list, that chart, you can see that in between each vertebrae, there are organ systems associated with those areas, those intervertebral spaces. And so in this class I teach, I show you how the physical, those tender spots and knots along the spine, correlate with organ systems, not from a nervous system perspective, but from an energetic acupuncture perspective. And it really marries the two worlds together. I'm not sure if I can say this or not. I don't know if you have editing ability, you might want to use it after I say it. But if you walked in and said, how do I do this where I don't get you in trouble and me too? If I had fibroid tumors in my breast, okay? There we go. I think I skated the line there. And if you told me that, I would know at thoracic 4, your folks can see this in their picture, it says breast, sweat gland, and hair follicle at T4. In my world, if you told me you had fibroid tumors in your breast tissue, I would know at thoracic 4 on the side of that breast, on the side of the spine of that breast, I'm going to find a knot or knots that are tender in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I teach this to body workers, they often don't know this concept, this particular way of looking things. And so when I teach them this chart, they put their hands on people with a whole new awareness. So because you have a client come in, they give you their ailments, their listing of symptoms, and they think they're all separate from each other. And would probably have to go to all kinds of specialists to address all of them. The beauty of what I teach in the Chinese medical model is we don't do that. We look at the whole person and say, what is the running theme here that's creating the symptoms that seemingly are separate but are very much connected? And I would go, oh, thoracic 4, absolutely. We're going to look for the tender spot. Or if you're doing it from a distance, like all of my work now, because I used to have a practice where I had 2 or 3 rooms going where I had hands on people all day long for years. Now I just feel in that thoracic 4. And I know from my training myself and teachers I've had that there's a blockage there, and that we can learn how to open that energetic blockage from a distance to then relieve, to restore the flow, relieve the tenderness, and dissolve the knot over time.
And in your class, we would practice on each other, and there was so much of that. Even though you know, we were at a distance and didn't know each other. Sometimes we'd pick, oh, well, I've got an issue with my shoulder. Can you work on that or something? But a lot of times we would just try and practice feeling, and I can't remember the exact ones. Like, oh, I feel something in your ankle or something. Oh, yeah, I just sprained my ankle, and people would get like crazy simple validation early on just by trusting in what we felt. Really,
that's right. Do you mind if I do a quick experiment that won't be just for you? It'll be for anybody who's watching. Can we do that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So thoracic 5, everybody will look at that chart and look at thoracic 5, T5. It says heart on the left side of spine, and the right side of spine is pericardium, the surrounding protector of the heart physically and energetically. So if we go to you, Cathy, since everybody can see you in this broadcast, we'll go to thoracic 5 right now. So I'll move over so they can kind of see what I'm doing. And I'm going to tap into thoracic 5 on you, but I'm also with the intention holding that anybody who watches this now or in the future is going to tap into their thoracic 5. And so I'm going to say that password phrase that's part of our Qigong form that helps to move energy through clearly and cleanly. And I'll just say that as I'm opening that T5 area in you, it'll open whoever's watching as well. And so whoever's perceptive enough in this way will feel it. So here we go a couple of times of that password phrase. Take kindness and benevolence as basis. Take frankness and friendliness to heart. Speak with reason. Treat with courtesy. Act with emotion and accomplish results. One more time. Take kindness and benevolence as basis. Take frankness and friendliness to heart. Speak with reason. Treat with courtesy. Act with emotion and accomplish results. Now, we could keep going and working on a blockage like that by saying the password phrase over and over again. But just for a sample for people to feel, you know, that is what we do as one of the tools we learn in this class, is learn how to find those and then disperse those, restoring the flow of energy and information to those organ systems. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel my head pounding. You probably feel that.
Because the energy starts to move into her chest through that entry point of thoracic 5 into the heart space, the heart and pericardium, and then it starts moving energy out from there. So wherever it needs to go, then Cathy feels it where it needs to go and feels the release of it. Mm-hmm. And some of you who watch now or will watch in the future, when you see this in recording, you will feel that. And you're like, well, wait a minute, how can that work in a recording? That doesn't make any sense. It's not live. How does it work at all? But how does it work in a recording especially? And the answer is that sound and light are transmitters, carrier waves of information and energy. And so we have both of those involved here. We have sound and we have, of course, the picture you're watching. So it's carried on at least, very least, 2 different carrier wave forms, sound and light. So it's always there in the recording. Mm-hmm. Cathy's emitting it too as she's speaking. She's emitting her particular signature that is unique to Cathy coming through to all of you. And as she cultivates this energy and cultivates the virtue in her life, that is also transmitted to all of you every time she speaks to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool stuff. I love it. Okay.
I know you said 30 minutes, so I was like, well, we've gone over at least.
Oh, no, I knew we had a lot there. That's awesome. I don't see any particular questions, but like I said, if you're listening to this on the replay and have questions, just go ahead and ask them there, because we'll monitor the chat. And see if you have any questions there. And also, if you're, as you're listening to this on the replay as well, or right now, let us know if you're new to any of this type of concept, or are pretty versed in it. Because it's interesting to see more and more people are like just listening to this. Like years ago, I think we would have done this and people would have gone, but now people go, oh yeah, okay, that's how that works. And I can feel that in life, and the kids coming in are just so, like you said, the kids coming in are just amazing, have amazing abilities, and sometimes too sensitive. It's sometimes their issue. And really need to learn how to cultivate this and how to filter it in and out a little bit better. So, yeah,
I'd like to say one little quick thing about that with children. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I think some kids are so sensitive is, for obvious reasons, we have pollutants of chemical and frequency, meaning electromagnetic fields, in a way that we've never had, at least knowingly we haven't had, in the history mm-hmm. of humanity. So there's more to be sensitive to that is not a natural sourcing of energy. Mm-hmm. Chemicals, I mean, come on, let's face it. We talk about food, right? I mean, mm-hmm. we know the stuff that's going into our food with GMO and with also what's been sprayed for decades now in our food supply, the poor quality of the soil. But now we have electromagnetic fields that we've had for a while that are just, they're stacking more and more. People are like, oh, 5G, there's nothing wrong with 5G. We've got some science around it. It's fine. I'm like, well, really, they haven't done any experimentation, to be quite honest. We are the experiment. But don't think of it as just 5G. This is 5G on top of all the other electromagnetic fields, including the wiring in your house. Mm-hmm. You know Cyril Burke, who's the co-creator of the My Health part of the Nest Health mm-hmm. system. They have the device called the My Health. Well, he was one of the major contributors to that, and he's a friend of mine in Australia, and he specializes in EMF protection. And he says just that in your walls alone, just the electrical current in your wiring is always putting out a field. So children have that to react to, and we do too, of course, as adults. But they're mm-hmm. so delicate when they're little. Mm-hmm. Now, on top of that, you take the fact that they are then exposed, and I won't get controversial here, but they're exposed at a very young age to agents that also cause a lot of autoimmune function, or potentially, I should say, cause a lot of autoimmune function, making their nervous systems much more sensitive to overload. Mm-hmm. So with what you and I teach when it comes to food, when it comes to energetics in general, this is really crucial for parents to understand with their children. If you want your sensitive child to be able to handle this world a little better, or a lot better, mm-hmm. the things that we're talking about right here, these are the missing pieces to preparing your children who are especially empathic to handle this world. Empathy is a beautiful thing, mm-hmm. but it's such a harsh world that we live in right now. And we need to prepare them for this. And this is the component that is being overlooked even in the holistic community. This isn't understood very well. Mm-hmm. Even if you can diagnose the issue, there's not a whole lot of what do I do about it.
Yeah, I started out in the schools as an occupational therapist when all this started happening. Yes. And it was like, wait a minute, none of this was before when I started out as an OT in the schools, especially. That's right. I saw the all of a sudden the diagnosis of the ADD and all that sort of thing, and autism. And yes. I think now some of us think we've figured that out in terms of why it's happening in a way. But yeah, if you're a parent concerned about any of that, this is the perfect way to deal with that. And I just saw some amazing stories as an OT, and that's why I went into sensory integration and all that kind of stuff, and saw that. But as you kind of learn about that, you go on, and yeah, there's got to be a way to kind of take a look at that in a real sense and an energetic sense, and help your family with it.
One last story connected to this I want to put out there. I was a little late getting here, as you know, this morning to do the test, and I had a contact from a client of mine who's more than a client. He's a good friend of mine. He has a son who's 16 with severe autistic expression, nonverbal. He has to be taken care of like he's a little bitty tiny child, and he will have seizures. He will have overloads where he bangs his head against the wall and can potentially cause, of course, a lot of brain damage doing that. And so he let us know this morning before I left, Angel and myself, my fiance, who works in the same field as I do, in her own unique way. And he said he's having an episode. And so we're teaching him how to, and we've spread those episodes out greatly since we started working with this gentleman, the father. He's learning how to mitigate the overload that his child has in the past on a regular basis, a weekly basis, to where he can handle all of it himself. And this guy is very smart. He's sought every sourcing he could find for how to handle his child's situation to make his life better and make the house more peaceful. And this component that we're teaching him, I think he would for surely say, is helping out a lot to empower him on how to help his child to have a more peaceful existence in this world. And this is one of the major pieces for parents like that are just, I don't know what else to do. We've tried everything. We've altered diet. We've altered the room. We've altered the house. We've altered his interactions. Her interactions, we don't know else to do. This is the component that often is missing from that plan for children who are in this situation.
Yeah. I've worked with a fair amount of autistic, and boy, you could just see them in there, and they are smart.
Yes.
They are just the outer world is doing. I'm going to put up a picture of you and Angel.
Sure, I appreciate that. That's out here around Lake Crescent on the peninsula, and Angel is hopefully you'll have her on here in the near future. She's pure magic. If you want to know what's going on in the innermost reaches of your heart, and you can't seem to figure out what that thing is that gnaws at you all the time, that you just can't figure out what it is, she helps you to find that every single time. And then she helps you to learn how to have this. She gives you the skills to then learn how to create movement in your life, momentum in your life when you feel stuck in your health, stuck in your job, stuck in your relationships, which is the basis of much of our lives. She is the specialist. In fact, in Nashville, before we left, she was having a lot of clients who were actually speaking of relationships, in extreme narcissistic relationships, trying to figure out how to get out and then how to recover from those relationships. And she's the best I've ever seen with that type of dynamic, for sure. So she's my magical other half, for sure.
And there is a question. Let me bring that picture down there, and I'll bring that up. It's kind of long, but it doesn't show on the screen. I'll try and read it. Deborah's. Okay, can you see that, Keith?
Yeah, I recently had a little yet powerful introduction to Qigong through an interview on Gaia TV. I did a couple of movements with a Qi master and was blown away by the feeling of electricity moving around me. My dogs come and stand close to me when I stand to move this energy. My question is about my fingers, which are frozen in a bent position, making the hand positions possible only in my mind. I cannot put my hands palm together in prayer position. Does that inhibit the actual flow of energy, or does my intention override the physical? Deborah, I can't speak about this particular form of Qigong by name, but I'm feeling the Qigong form as much as I can through you. And it does have some power. Some Qigong forms are extremely powerful, others not so much. This one has a lot of power. And I'll let you know how a good Qigong form is put together from my understanding. It'll help you understand, hopefully, the answer to your question. The movements are simply triggers to unlock the software that the creator of the form has put into the form. The software is what draws in the energy from all that is around us, the infinite energy that's around us and we are a part of. And so, such as in our Qigong movement, it's about, holding the sun and rotating the sun, the moon for the yin, so the sun's the yang, the moon's the yin, and you harmonize that together. And if you have an injury, affliction, whatever, you couldn't move your hands that way in our form, the intention does override the inability to move the arms or hands, hold them in the proper position. And a good form will do that. The software will override the potential inaccuracies or inability to do the physical form itself. And I would say with any Qigong form, any energetic form, As long as it is something that cultivates kindness and benevolence and love, it's a good form. And the fact that you felt the power in this one shows, and I can feel it, it has some power to it. So good on you for finding a good Qigong form. And yes, your intention will override that. If your body is doing this of its own accord and you're not sure why you can't hold your hands or arms in a certain way, and it's just happening spontaneously, it's okay. It's more than likely an adjustment that's being taking place in your body, and over time that will free up and you'll gain that mobility back again.
Mm-hmm.
So that answers that question.
You teach the Qigong form with Master O, and I just got the non-moving form. So there is a form of, I'm glad I learned this one first because it's very minimal movement. It's awesomely powerful, and now I just learned the non-moving form as well. So there is a form of the Pangu Qigong that not a replacement for the moving form, I understand, but there is actually a form that's actually non-moving. So sometimes if I'm just hanging out in bed, I'm like, I don't want to get up yet. I'll just do the non-moving form, before I decide to jump out of bed.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, I'll go ahead and I'll toot Master Owen's horn. There's an infinite number of Qigong forms in the world. They all have a different purpose and why they were created. Master O's form is truly about the cultivating. You're welcome, Deborah. The cultivating of love and benevolence, which then gives you life force. I'll be, of course, very biased, as you imagine I would be. I feel out a lot of different people who are Qigong teachers and their students. And so I have a chance, and I get people coming to me all the time. You got to try this out. You got to feel this. And so I check it out. I try to be open-minded and feel out the energy of it. And I've yet to find one for what I want to accomplish in my life that is more powerful with the least amount of effort as Pangu Shingon. That's the reason why I do it. I'm like everybody else. I only have so many hours in a day. And I've got to do what's giving me the most for my time committed to it. And his form, and because I know him so well, 17 years, it's the most powerful in the sense of, like I said, cultivating of love, kindness, and benevolence, and healing. If you put the time in, for whatever you have going on in your life, it's amazing for bringing that about. But again, many powerful forms out there. I've just never found one that cultivates this in the way that his does.
And Keith, now do you teach that separately as well?
Yeah, I have. I teach the moving form, which you learn first, which is what you see Master holding the particular pose of that form. And then I teach what you just talked about, the non-moving form. And that non-moving form is built upon the moving form. So it comes after it. And it's specifically to do a deep cultivation of the heart and soul, meaning that it takes, one, it restores emotional and mental fatigue better than anything I've ever experienced before, that non-moving form does. It also awakens the gifts you didn't know you have, and strengthens the ones that you're aware of that you do have in a very deep and mystical way. And like you said, it's non-moving. So I'm walking in a park, or I'm standing in a bank line or a checkout in a grocery store, and I've got 5-10 minutes on my hands. I'll do a non-moving form until it's time for me to get up there and be waited on. I'll use it in any moment to cultivate energy, calm myself down, and to restore myself from the hectic life that we live, even when places like you and I live, which are out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but it's awesome to do. It takes away any oh my God, I'm in traffic just waiting. Just do the Qigong form, and you're just making use of time, big time.
That's right. Yeah, it's amazing. What is the spelling of that? Says Judy. Pangu, and I don't know if I gave you anything at all that has it on there, Kathy, but I'll spell it slowly. It's P-A-N as in Nancy, G-U, space, S-H-E-N as in Nancy, G-O-N-G. Pangu Shungong, and I'll tell you why it's called Shungong. Pangu Shungong, Shun means spirit, that which comes. You can see spirit. So even from here, right, we're across over 1,000 miles, maybe over 2,000, no, well over 2,000 miles, like 3,000 miles, Kathy and I, opposite ends of the country. Yet I can feel the energy, the spirit coming from her eyes as she looks into her camera. That's the Shun. That's that life that comes out of you. And so it's that deep spiritual essence of you that is eternal, right? And so Shun Gong is the deep cultivation of spirit cultivation, meaning that deep, deep, deep essence of who you are as an individual. And Pangu is the infinite source of all creation, is the best way of saying that word. So infinite source of creation, spirit cultivation as a translation of those words there. And if you look up pangu.org, pangu.org, you'll see all this information about Master O and the Qigong form and testimonials and his schedule, everything on there. If you ever have questions about any of this, I am your English connector for all that questions. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about the Qigong form. It sustained me and helped me grow for 17 years. Again, I get approached about all kinds of different things. A lot of them have efficacy, but nothing so far has given me the growth that this does. Let's go. I'm practical. I go with what works.
Yeah. And Keith, you do individual sessions too, right?
Yeah, I do distance sessions all the time throughout the week. It's 7 days a week I do sessions. And we just set up a time. You tell me what's going on in your life, either through a phone call or like this, through video conferencing or texting, even if that's what you feel comfortable doing. And we set up a time. You sit down, lie down someplace comfortable. I work on you from about 45 minutes to an hour. And then we have a follow-up conversation about what you experienced, what I found, and what I worked on. And then I check up on you. And there's Pat. Thank you, Pat. Pat is a fairly long time practitioner of this Qigong form at this point. And I've watched Pat grow amazingly. And she's a great practitioner in her own right. And she can move a lot of energy, a lot of loving chi. So to give Pat her props. Thank you.
Pat and I don't live too far from each other. So one of these days, right, Pat?
That's right. That's right. You guys are pretty close. So yeah, I do distance sessions, and that's been my bread and butter for 17 years. I love that one. I'll never get tired of working with people individually like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna. I guess we'll sign off. This has been awesome, Keith. It's always nice to talk to you because I love the class. It was just very. I never used the word expansive, but it was expansive to my skills. And I just love it. And I am so happy I found the Qigong form because, again, it's so much little effort for so much energy, really. Yeah. And I do have my own. I have the Lake Clear Lodge. Let's see, I think that's this. Oh, yeah. And my website, too, is Nourishing 9D. I use 9 different levels of nourishment to nourish the multidimensional body and have my own program as well, which I have a lot of fun with both here at the lodge and online as well. So I have a lot of fun with that. And yeah, if anybody wants to connect in and look at that, I'm always there as well. So
cool.
All right, Keith. We'll
Thank you, Cathy, for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's fun, and we'll get together with Angel too. And I would love to do like a demo sometime where you do one of your exercises for folks to see that as well. That would be awesome.
Say the word. We'll do it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Pat. Nice.
Thanks, Pat.
Nice seeing you on. Thanks. Yeah, and have a great day, everybody. And again, everybody on the replay, type in your questions or comments, and we'll kind of monitor them as it goes along. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, we'll see you next time. We'll do this again.
Bye-bye.
Okay.